Marvin Devine. I'm saying bye to all the lies and all the times you cried, saying that I wasn't right, yet I was right by your side. You manipulator, playing games, your friends commentators, and I don't know what you say about our private conversations, but it's got them hating. Thanks to all the rumors you be claiming. It's cool, I'm done with you, so they can throw you a celebration. You gon' hate it when you see me with somebody living better. I'm trying to tell you that me just doing me gon' have you jealous.
Hello, folks. Welcome back to the program. This is Chris, live in Central Pennsylvania with my special guest today. It's none other than Joe Emilio. It's Dodgy Joe, folks. Joe and I haven't been on air for a while. In fact, I visited him recently, and he was too busy raising kids to do a show with me. We didn't have time for that. But I did have the privilege, and I consider it a privilege, and I actually like to say it's an honor, Joe, given how wonderful it actually has turned out to be. But Joe did ask me to pre-screen and take a look at his documentary, which we're going to talk about there on stolen land or stolen ground about the Tygerberg Raceway. And I knew a bit about the story, but I didn't know enough about it. Joe sent me the video. I looked at it and I was gobsmacked. It was unbelievable. Joe, it's I don't want to say by far your best work, because you do great work, but it's just, I mean, it wouldn't be a stretch to say this is Cannes documentary worthy, buddy. How you doing?
Thanks, Chris. I'm doing very well, thanks. I like you just said, I screened it to a few people. You were one of them. I was actually very nervous to let you watch it.
Yeah, I got that. I got that impression. You like maybe I shouldn't let him see it, but dude, I mean, look, I want to do a collab with you now. That's how good it was.
Oh wow, that'd be awesome. I was nervous. I think for anyone really to see it, because when you stare at something for so long, like there were so many editing hours put into that documentary, that I honestly didn't think it was. I mean, I knew it was good, but I didn't think it was going to be like the way it was received good. I had a lot of I still had a lot of are people going to get it? Are people going to understand it and stuff like that? But luckily, my wife, Sky Zade, she was very supportive. She took the kids many nights so that I could edit in the evening. Hugely supportive. So a lot of thanks goes to her for allowing me to do it. And she was part of the translations and stuff like that, and the Afrikaans translations. If it wasn't for her, I don't think I would have gotten it done in time. And she can attest to how hard I worked at it. But the point is, when she looked at it first, she was the first one to see it completed, and she was like, "No, Joe, this needs to get out there. You've done an excellent work. Like, you're going to see people are going to respond to this very well, or very nicely." And so far, yeah, she's right. Everybody has, and I'm extremely grateful. It's difficult to say I had a lot of fun, because the documentary isn't exactly good newsworthy. But I did. I had fun in the sense of the creative process of it, putting it together, watching it go from an idea to what I had envisioned and this end product. Even though the story and what I'm talking about is quite emotional and also can make one quite angry. Me and my wife were very pissed off during a lot of the interviews and what we were hearing. And I can see a lot of South Africans are also pissed off about it, and anybody that watches the documentary. I've had very little pushback, which I think says a lot to either nobody can really fault it, or maybe the lefties are still trying to figure out a way of how to discredit me, or I don't know, maybe they're just waiting in the wings until it hits 100K views. And then they'll start bitching about it. But either way, I'm prepared, and so far the response has been amazing.
Well, Joe, what I was going to say, I wanted to let you continue that. I didn't want to interrupt you. What I want to say is that I don't really care what the reception was. I mean, you obviously care. I don't care. I don't need reception to know that this was a brilliant documentary. It's well. Sorry, just a second. My alert box is on there. It should have been off. I had rebooted. Apparently came back on. So we'll get distracted there. But I mean, I don't need that to know that this was an incredible documentary. It's unbelievable, from the production value to the questions asked to the focus on the interviewee. In fact, like when you're talking to JP Smith, you weren't even on camera for the most part, which we love seeing on camera. But that was just so well done. and really, and look, I have to tell you too, my eyes were opened up a little bit to JP Smith. I've heard good things about him. I'm not saying he's good or bad, but what I am saying is that in that interview, I'm very impressed with his knowledge and where he's coming from and just where he's at. It gave me some renewed hope for some DA politicians after watching that. Not that things are great, but that certainly made me feel better. So, it's incredible, the story. Someone just asked in the chat, why not other things? Guys, you can't cover everything. And this one's iconic for a lot of reasons. Okay, number one, when someone steals a farmer's field, they throw up a bunch of shacks. Well, yay, there's a bunch of shacks everywhere in South Africa. But when someone steals a racetrack and you can see where the homes have been built around the oval from the air in a drone, that is an iconic image you cannot get out of your mind. And I think from that standpoint alone, it was a compelling story just to talk about it. But all the rest of this, and then, of course, Joe, you also touched on this a bit in the video, and we're seeing it now with the floods that have occurred overnight in Cape Town in many places. We got the situation, and we've seen it in KZN too, but it's especially bad in the Western Cape, where people are basically living in wetlands. They occupy land in wetlands, and that racetrack was essentially in a wetland, one reason why the land was available and not for use at the time. And he talked about he had to pump water out all the time. Now these people live there, and they want services in a place they shouldn't be living. All those places should be destroyed. But Joe, what was the most heart-wrenching part? I imagine talking to the owner who lost his business.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That was. I'll be honest. It was, most of it was in Afrikaans, which is why I had Helene with me to help translate, and she also helped to follow what he was saying. And then I told her, I said, "Listen, you're going to be mainly the interviewee in this, or the interviewer, sorry, in this scenario, because you're going to understand exactly what he's saying. And if you find anything, just jump in. Just don't be afraid to ask away and stuff." And she did exactly that. She's the one that asked that question, that emotional question. And even though I didn't fully understand, I remember sitting there and being choked up myself, because I knew that what she asked was very powerful and meant a lot to him. Later on, I found out what she said, and every time I watch that part, it takes me back to that moment, sitting with him and feeling the pain, feeling that sorrowness, feeling almost like, you can relate in the sense of like he's lost everything, and he fought so hard to protect it. So that was definitely a very emotional part for me in the documentary. And Gary's, when Gary spoke about what the community lost and how, everything was like an ecosystem, because when there was a race event, it was vendors, it was
the program sellers. It was the park.
Yeah,
it was the car guards, the refugees that came to America and lost their jobs.
And by the way, like, speaking about car guards, like, he hired car guards from the local community, right? So because there's the Wallace Dean right next door, right? And he would hire people from those communities to watch the cars. And I'm still going to release this later as like an extra feature, or I don't know what to call it, like extra content. But there's two pieces of content that I want to release a bit later, maybe next week or the week after. Which is one about a little bit more about what GP was talking about, and some interesting statistics that he mentioned during that interview that unfortunately couldn't make the cut. And then the other one is about what Chris, the owner, the former owner, what he says that he still does for that community years later. I don't want to spoil anything for anyone, but I just want people to know, like, he's still involved with that community and helps out that community. And they ask him almost every day, when are you coming back? And obviously he can't, but the community still likes him, because when he was there with the raceway, he was helping the community. He'd let them have water, he would feed them, he would send them food parcels, and many times he gave them jobs when like if they wanted to help him clean the raceway or do something in the raceway, or car guards and stuff like that, they helped out, and he would hire them and pay them. So for those racist individuals who say, oh, it's just a white man crying about his money, no, he helped out a lot with the community, and he still does.
Well, in fact, what it did is it destroyed a community, and it created another mess for metropolitan officials to have to deal with. And it creates another false narrative for the leftists to go, well, until all the townships are gone, No, you're creating townships where there were no townships. You see the Vox video, which got 12 million views, and I made a video a couple years ago refuting it, where they go, the spatial apartheid legacy continues for years. They keep showing townships that didn't exist 30 years ago. These are ANC townships that were taken on stolen land, which is why I love your documentary. You touched on something in the video that I think is very important, Joe, and I've been saying this over and over again, ever since expropriation without compensation was signed into law in December, but, Ramaphosa lied and pretended to sign it at the Davos for big fanfare after the 30-day period for members of parliament to refute it was expired. That's illegal, by the way. But after he signed that, the government, of course, after Trump put his executive order out the 7th of February, there's no land being stolen. It's fake news. It's lies. It's AfriForum. The government's not stealing land. I said, it doesn't matter if the government steals land. I said, this encourages people who already steal land, and the government doesn't react, and you have stolen land, which has been going on for decades. And we've seen it almost immediately. And in fact, the editors didn't tell their reporter not to report, because SABC actually went to Shisheho in Polokwane. We're here on land where they're dividing it up. Here are the people occupying land. And then that story was killed, but we have the video footage of that covered by SABC. Then East London, where the cops were dividing up plots of land on a farm and selling it, and Northwest. So whether the government steals land or not through expropriation without compensation, land is being stolen, and the inaction by the government undermines property rights. And that's why I'm not buying any land in South Africa, because it's a disaster. But you touched on this, and this is, I think, a very important aspect of your documentary, because I don't hear it from many people. I hear it from myself, of course, and a few other people, but it doesn't get enough attention because the legacy media is not going to talk about it. Is this something that that was quite obvious because of what happened to Tygerberg as you went through this documentary, the land just being taken without any recourse? And then I want to go from that, let's segue, once you answer that, into this hideous piece of legislation that has been contorted by corrupt courts to allow property owners to be forced to provide accommodation for criminals who occupy their land and steal their land. Anyway, go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, so the whole question about the PI Act and the expropriation and stuff like that is, it definitely was obvious to me that there's some kind of nefarious undertaking here. I listen, the PI Act was signed into law in 1998. That's when it became possible for individuals to manipulate this law. And yes, the law was first there for example, Chris, if you're, let's say, you're in the States, but you have a piece of property in South Africa, and you're renting it out to me, and I'm in your house, and then one day I decide, you know what, I'm not gonna pay you anymore for whatever reason. I don't know. I lost my job or whatever the case may be, or I just decided, screw it. You being in the States, or even if you were in South Africa, there's not much you can do. You'd have to then, before this act was signed into law, you could easily just kick me out on the streets and there's nothing I can do. But now this act prevents you from doing that. You have to go through the courts. So it was a way to make sure that people weren't evicted in an inhumane way, that you have to go through the courts and let the courts decide. Now, we all know South Africa, the courts are not the best. The courts take time and they're very expensive, which is the issue that arises now with the PI Act. But what's even more evil is that the law, or the PI Act, is written in such a way that is so vague that a lot of people have found a way to manipulate it. Where if I so much as jump over your wall and you still live in that house, and I set up a tent, and I even just leave my toothbrush in a suitcase that might be empty, by the way, and I bugger off somewhere else, I want to, I don't know, look for whatever stuff to do, you can't remove that tent. You're not allowed to. By law, you are not allowed to, because there's evidence that someone lives there. That is how this PI Act has been manipulated in such a way. And when you start looking at it from a land grab perspective, where you have land that is earmarked for housing. And I spoke to JP about this. I asked him, is it a common trait that you see, that every time there's an area marked for housing, there's a land grab? And he said, yes, most of the time, that's what happens. And that's when he went into the whole, we've seen it in the documentary, I include that, where he says we've seen their own staff use the system against them and their corrupt staff and all that stuff. But that trend is a very scary trend, and it's very worrying because you have these individuals, these gangsters, mafiosos, corrupt officials that are manipulating the system to make money, by the way, because somehow or some way, when the land invasion happens, then you've got these other gangsters that are selling these little plots of lands to people for 5,000, 15,000 rand. And the plot doesn't really belong to them. They're not getting a title deed. And so these people make money. The officials obviously will probably get, the corrupt officials will probably get like a kickback of some sort, I imagine. And this land invasion happens, which hurts the people that are waiting on the waiting list, which is what the land was originally for when it was earmarked for housing. So now those people are still waiting on the list. And then you have this situation where you have this land that's been overtaken, right? The government can easily now, with the Expropriation Act, come and see this land and be like, we need to fix this land, or we need to do something with this land to make it more humane for people to live here. So we're going to expropriate this land without compensation. That's because of the way the Expropriation Act is written. It is possible for them to do it. I'm not saying they will, but they can. And also, what makes it even more worrying in this situation is that we're seeing it happen, like in real time, because not too long ago, the president mentioned that they want to expropriate the buildings in Johannesburg.
Central Business District, yep.
Yes. And what was the reason? Oh, we want to make Johannesburg look like it was back in the day. We want to bring it back to the heydays.
But the excuse they were using, and it goes right to the PI Act and also to the inaction of the courts, the excuse that he used was that these buildings are abandoned. But we both know that the buildings are not abandoned. Gangsters have chased the owners away. They've turned to the police, who refuse to do anything about it, either because they're corrupt or they're terrified or they're incapable. And they go to the courts, they spend a fortune going bankrupt trying to get their properties back. And now the government, which created the conditions which allow lawlessness, is using the excuse that they've abandoned their property to confiscate it. I'm sorry, I thought we weren't going to take anything except abandoned property. A bunch of nonsense. It must be nice to be a communist.
But that's my point. And like, there's the one building, the fire station, right?
Yep.
That fire station was on SABC. They showed how many people are living there and how the conditions are horrible. And that's one of the buildings that Cyril Ramaphosa wants to expropriate, revitalize and make it an apartment building or whatever. But again, I'm talking about that's a Johannesburg city example. But they could do the exact same thing on any other plot of land that has shacks. They could use the same argument. So that's what I'm saying. Like, that's why I try and make that connection at the end of the documentary. Is like, this isn't a far reach, guys. And I didn't mention the Johannesburg example because it just wasn't time.
Yeah.
But seeing what's happening in Johannesburg, it's happening. And it's not. So I do think that this is a very nefarious way of being able to execute the Expropriation Act. And also, if we look at the farms that you mentioned just now, the farms that are being expropriated, the government can come and say the same thing. Because again, in the Expropriation Act, there's this one clause, I think it says something, I'm paraphrasing, but it says like if the land was abandoned, basically. But there's a second part to it that, and you can prove that you are still doing something about it. So basically, what that excuse now says is like, the government can take your land only if, one, it's abandoned, and you're not doing anything to get it back. So if you can prove that yes, the land invasion happened or whatever happened to your land, you abandoned it, but you're trying to get it back or you're trying to fix it, you're in that process, the government can't take it. But like I said, with the PI Act, what happens? You end up in court for years. You can become financially bankrupt, and most people end up not fighting anymore and just abandoning their land. So the government can come and be like, "Oh, you stopped trying to get your land back. You abandoned it. We're going to take it." It's literally what can happen.
Yeah, it's you know, you have to ask this question, Joe, and I'm sure you've asked yourself this question. I've stated it many times. Why did the government need expropriation without compensation? What problem were they fixing? You know, when you make a law, you should be addressing a problem. What problem you make? Well, the transformation hasn't been fast enough. Well, you bought 4 million hectares of land. Why haven't you distributed? You have enough surface area to cover the entire city of Los Angeles, which is a massive city, as reported by Business Tech this week. It's when the government passes legislation, it should be to fix a problem or address a problem that you see coming. There's no problem that's being fixed here. It's created problems because it's empowered the lawless to behave. Remember the SABC report there in Sashejo, the president signed the Expropriation Act and we are expropriating this. I'm sorry, you're not a competent legal authority, but apparently you're taking land and people have left it. It's interesting because just up the road from my house, about 800 meters, I go out of the housing development here, there's farm fields across the street. And every year they grow maize or wheat. But after so many years, you need to let the soil lay fallow so that it rejuvenates. Well, the field is fallow now, and it's been fallow all spring and summer. Is that abandoned land? Well, in South Africa, they would claim it is, and they'd occupy it, and we'd be screwed. But that farmer would lose his property, and then we'd have shacks sitting there. And that's exactly what's happening all over South Africa, isn't it?
And also, like with the Expropriation Act, one thing that's also very alarming is like some people, they buy plots of land and then they'll keep it. So for example, like there was a time when my wife and I were, before we bought this house, we were thinking of buying a plot of land and then waiting maybe 2-3 years and then, building upon it as we save money to be able to build. We obviously didn't go in that direction, but in the Expropriation Act, if you do that, the government can take your land. So in other words, let's say you buy a plot of land and the government says, what did they exactly say? They said, if you're waiting for it to increase in value, they say, no, you're not allowed to do that. We can take it now. We can take it with no compensation. And that to me is also very alarming and very nefarious. Like, again, like you said, like if you didn't need, it's one thing to say, okay, why did you sign these laws if you don't need them? But when you start reading the conditions, you're like, okay, but if you didn't need this law, if you didn't need, if you're saying this is all nice and hunky-dory, why do you have that clause in there? Why don't you want even black individuals, right, to be able to buy a plot of land, let it, grow in value, and then if they want to sell it, sell it. If they don't want to sell it, then whatever, they build on it, You should want your South African people to be able to build wealth, and you are literally taking it away from them.
Yeah.
With no compensation.
Joe, look, I mean, it's ridiculous. I read the Expropriation on Compensation BS when it was put out, and it says exactly that. It says, if you buy land for speculation, well, why do people buy homes? When you buy a property, unless you have cash outright and you're rich, you're paying a loan. Paying a loan at an interest rate means you're paying back more money than the land cost. So in order just to break even and not have a loss on land, you would have to have the land appreciate in value. So of course people buy land to speculate. They buy houses to speculate. They buy classic cars to speculate on the value rising. You buy stocks to speculate. You are doing it to appreciate value. This is the dumbest moronic thing on the planet. It's about as dumb as a radical Islamist fascist winning the Democratic primary in New York City saying he's going to start a chain of 6 grocery stores. Welcome to London West London, known as New York, New Jack City, the big rotten apple. Anyway, yikes. Sorry, I digress. We're on our way to match Joburg in New York City. We're trying to reach it. So, gosh. Yeah,
that's also another story. But yeah, so the documentary opened even my eyes. There was a lot I didn't know about the PI Act before I started venturing. I didn't know about shack farming. I didn't know about a lot of the stuff that JP mentioned. I didn't know it was this bad. I heard stories about, they bus in people and Daisy confirmed that. You always hear these rumors, but you don't realize how bad it was. And this really horrible legislation about the PI Act is really worrying. And I'm glad to see that the DA and the referendum party are doing something to try and fix it. My question, though, and I've seen a lot of people on social media throw a lot of hate towards the DA. And while I get it, the DA as of late hasn't been the DA we knew before the GNU. I get it. I get where the hate is coming from. I really do. But in my documentary, I really tried to set out to be fair to the DA. I didn't want to make them look bad. I, as a matter of fact, wanted to show that the DA are trying to do something or trying to fight this with basically one hand tied behind their back. And while I do agree with what Robert said in the documentary, where, you know, the Western Cape, the DA has the majority, the DA could have changed the housing policy within the Western Cape. I agree with him 100%, and that's where I'm like, okay, so the DA has one hand tied behind the back, and instead of trying to untie it, they're busy using this other hand to do stupid things. And so, yes, a little bit of criticism to the DA, but for the most part, what happened at the raceway, what happened in general during, with all the other land grabs that have happened in the Western Cape, especially during COVID, is not the DA's fault. They really did try. And remember, SAPS is a very thinly, has very thin resources. There were 12 land grabs at one point happening at the same time. They're going from pillar to post. I remember that time that was happening. That's what happened in Gerbau, Hermanus.
Yep.
I think it was Infunini or something, Kailicha. The list goes on and on. There really were a lot of land grabs happening during that time. I remember those land grabs, and they were trying. They really were trying. But again, the South African Human Rights Commission then coming in to stop the city from basically evicting people. I mean, you know, people have to remember that. Again, the DA was trying with limited resources, with a law that was completely against them, and the South African Human Rights Commission that was supposed to help the guy who owns that land or is leasing that land or owns property on that land. They were supposed to help him. What about his rights?
No, Joe. No. I'm sorry.
We got to worry.
Sorry. The South African Captured Human Rights Commission is there to oppress white minorities, not to help them.
Of course.
Okay.
Of course.
So. But Joe, there's three things. Go ahead.
As Mort calls them, the South African. What do you call them? The South African Black Rights Commission.
Yeah.
Like that.
No, I call the South African Captured Human Rights Commission because they were captured a long time ago. So there's three things that really stand out for me, Joe, that were helpful for me that you did this. First off, before I say that, you know, as far as the documentary, you know, when we do stories, both of us know this, we can try to be objective, but we also have to be careful about our personal bias because we can lean one way or another. Like I just did a video complimenting the DA on his 25th birthday, but I know a lot of people are pissed off the DA, so I went on and talked about the things that people are upset about. But I didn't pile on attack people, so I thought that was pretty objective. But I got some freaking arrows from some of the DA sycophants who didn't like that. But what I want to say is that so how you take the story can affect how people interpret it. But what I want to say is that to me, this documentary appeared to be very balanced and objective. You didn't attack the ANC specifically. You know, I mean, the objective here wasn't to destroy the ANC. The objective here wasn't to prop up the DA. And you asked hard questions. What the objective here seemed to be exposing the PI Act and the harm it can do to South Africans. That's what I got from it. But the three things that were really helpful to me, Joe, because you know, sometimes we know about things and we don't necessarily delve into it. I made these notes a few minutes ago. The PI Act. I'd heard about the PI Act. I had some vague familiarity with it, but I never really delved into it. And someone needed to do that. So you've done an incredible public service by exposing this, because most people have no idea this law even exists, including a lot of politicians who are responsible for metropolitans. So that's number one. The second one is that I knew that this was happening, but I didn't know it had a name. I mean, I've seen it in around the Pretoria area, this what you call shack farming. I was aware of that process and gangsters doing this sort of thing, but I didn't know it's called that. So that phrase getting out there more publicly now, I think is very helpful so people know about it. And then finally, the third thing that really stands out for me that was helpful is that this is a neglected story. You know, when the government tries to tell Donald Trump, by the way, have you met my white agricultural minister? I don't know if have you met him? when the government
is it that bunny that you showed me?
No, it's my man John. It's my man John. No, but when Ramaphosa tries to talk about none of this is happening, there's no land being stolen, he lies to Trump. This neglected story of what happened at Tygerberg about how land being stolen ground is this. I mean, look, if it's unfortunate that your documentary wasn't done in time for it to make it to the White House to go up there, because I would love to have seen Cyril say, Mr. President, have they told you where this is? I've never seen this before. It's at Tygerberg, you dumbass. That would have been epic.
If you want to be more specific.
Exactly. No, but I mean, those three things, getting the PI Act into public discourse, brilliantly done, Joe. You've done a great public service there. Giving the nickname or aphorism, shack farming, which I didn't know that term, but I knew the concept. And so sometimes you're trying to explain things, it's hard to grasp, but now it's easy. We just talk about shack farming, and then focusing on neglected stories. As the guy said earlier, what about the farms? Yeah, look, this is a story that's played out all over South Africa for the past, since 1998. It's played out all over. And it's never been addressed in this way that I've seen. And not the Laura and Southern documentaries, not Katie Hopkins, nothing I've seen from Carte Blanche is ever looked at in this fashion, Joe. I think it's worthy of an award, man. I think it should go to Cannes,
Yeah, I would love to receive an award, but I don't know. Okay, I'll tell you. I have submitted the documentary for some award festivals and stuff, but I won't hear feedback for a while because most of the awards are going to happen next year. So it's just the opening submissions now. I do plan in handing it into, I think it's the East London Film Festival that's happening in South Africa.
I'm not sure that film festival is going to happen. I understand that the building that they have was occupied by squatters this week.
Oh, the irony. But yeah, I'll see if I can get into some festivals, and otherwise I don't know where to submit it to get an award.
Well, actually, Joe, do a Google search, because when we did the Pet Zoo film crew edited and put together my Goed Constantia documentary back in 2022, we were looking at trying to submit it for awards, and there's actually several film festivals you can submit it to, and ways to do it digitally online. Just do a Google search for film festivals and film submission for documentaries. There's one in Canada. There's lots of them, but just check it out and submit it to all of them, man. Yeah, take a stab. You might get some awards.
Yeah, I'll definitely do that. Doing this documentary has been quite a learning curve, and I did a lot of research for it, and it's something that I do want to do again, because a lot of people have been, telling me like, hey, you got to do another one. Like, it's like not even like a day after it was released, people were like, when's the next one? I was like, oh my word.
Oh man, yeah, no, this is a multi-month project. This didn't happen overnight. Yeah, I know it's
exactly.
People get spoiled, Joe, because we crank out videos, analytical stuff. This morning I got this press release last night. I could have made a video, but it was 1:00 in the morning from AfriForum about what they say the U.S. is demanding to fix it. I mean, I could have analyzed this because it's pretty much what I've been telling people, and I could have cranked out a video in less than an hour with good insight. But it's not going to have production level quality and the depth and the research and the interviews. By the way, Joe, you're going to have to take me to that point you were standing on where you had the backdrop when you were narrating stuff. That is a great spot. Yeah. I need to use that for videos.
That was the Tiger Valley Nature Reserve, I think it was.
Okay. All right. Okay, cool.
Yeah, it's in my, I wouldn't say it's, okay, so you know where I live. It's about 15 minutes.
Okay.
So it's basically between where I live and Cape Town. In that.
No, I know the general vicinity, but I didn't know the exact spot. I mean, I could drive around and occupy people's property and put a tent up, and then I'd be.
There's a lot of nice houses in that area. Oh my word! I almost submitted my application to the EFF because I was like, yo, these are some houses I would like
to the EFF. Maybe a member of parliament.
But no, there's this. So. What I wanted to say is because someone said, like, what about the farms? So the next one is going to be on farms.
Okay.
That I can say. I don't want to say too much, because just like this one, the first one, I played very close to the chest. You know this. I was telling you about it. I played it very close to the chest because, and I was right to do so, because when I released the website, there was already people trying to take it down or hack it or whatever. Yep. So I could only imagine if I'd spoken too much about this, people could have reached out to Chris and said, hey, shut up. They could have reached out to other individuals and say, hey, don't talk to him. So I'm glad I played this close to the chest, and the next one I'm also going to play close to the chest. But I can say a few things, which is that it's going to require me to travel. I plan to do more digging, and I'll leave it at that. And from what I understand so far about this area, farmers are involved. So that's why I say farming is going to be a kind of a theme here. So yeah, that one, that story I definitely want to tell. And I've kind of lightly started looking into it a bit more, but I'm also pacing myself because this one also needs to simmer and people need to get this going and people need to share this far and wide, share it on your WhatsApp groups, your WhatsApp community, your Facebook groups, your Twitter, everywhere, anywhere that you are, just share it far and wide. More and more people need to know about what is happening in South Africa and that this law actually really does exist.
That's a horrible law. But, you know, Joe, one of my first concerns, we chatted about this, and I think you were concerned about this too, is that when you delve into something like this, there are vested interests, legitimate, illegitimate, in this whole process. And my concern was, number one, but you'd already done, it was pretty much done when I saw you when I was in South Africa. But my concern was, you'd already gotten to it, so you don't have to worry about people running off and not talking because of word get out you're doing. So that was concern, but not a real one at that stage. But my concern was about your safety because there's a lot of people vested interest here, and I don't think people realize just how nasty some people can be. And this story, the good news from your safety perspective is it doesn't really call out anyone who may have committed any particular crimes, which I think is good, but it does expose the issue, which I think is more important than actually exposing particular criminal conduct. That should be for the police and the Hawks to discover if they're interested. But I think that, safety is something a lot of people don't realize. When you do this sort of thing, you really put yourself out there, and you have a family. And so you've got to worry about your families. That's a concern, is it not?
No, 100% correct. And, even though I'm going to dig a little bit deeper with the next one, I do have to consider that. I do have to, if people go to the Back Buddy that I created, they'll see that the reason for the funding is safety, because I am going to need to get some security while filming, so that, I don't get robbed or, hurt or whatever. I am going to be careful with how deep I go. I think I told you this analogy. I was telling someone, I think the bear is okay with me poking around. If I poke the bear itself though too hard, it's going to get angry. So I've got to be, it's almost like that delicate balance where I can poke around the bear, get close, maybe give it one or two taps. But if I go even harder or if I get a bit too cocky, I'm going to be in trouble. And I feel like that's kind of scenario, because here's the thing, like JP was saying that some of these individuals, these mafiosos and these gangster type people have openly spoken to media about what they do, and haven't been shy or ashamed of what they do. And I've seen one or two articles where the person asked to be anonymous, but was talking about shack farming, like openly. So I don't think it's going to be that difficult as long as it's handled with, making sure that, I don't poke the bear too hard. Otherwise I'll be in trouble.
Well, Joe, there's actually one of the topics that I'm looking at working on my next visit. It's something I've covered is farms that were actually transferred and the condition they're in now. I don't know if that's something you're working on. You don't have to let that cat out of the bag, but maybe that's something we can collaborate on. Yeah, well, maybe that's something we can collaborate on if you're interested, because we could cover it from different angles. I can, you don't have, because I'm traveling all over when I go, and you can hit it from one place and I can hit it from another place if you're interested. But that's something that really needs to be addressed too, because it just gets cursory attention. And in particular, I'm looking at KZN, some places that were verdant, green, lush, and they're just disaster areas now as a consequence of mismanagement and also just the way that the things are handed over to people. It's just so poorly done. So,
and are we surprised, Chris?
No,
are we surprised about that?
No, we're not at all surprised. I'm also not surprised that, foot and mouth disease is spreading like wildfire in South Africa right now because the incompetence of the agricultural sector, oversight authorities, and what they did with the vaccination.
Oh, but I thought your guy John had it under control.
John's not my guy. He's Cyril's guy.
You're white.
My white agriculture minister. Yeah, that was epic, man. I don't know. Did you watch? I mean, you must have watched that when it unfolded.
Yeah. I was watching it with wife and family, and we were all. Yes, man. We were so like my mother-in-law got really upset. I've never seen her so upset. Jumping off the couch, like, "What are you doing, John?"
Well, not just that, though.
But
I have to say that, look, going back to that, sorry to get away from the documentary for a minute, but going back to the Oval Office massacre, I think that the only person that handled it well was Parks Tao. He sat there still. His fingers didn't fidget. He made no faces. He was like a schoolboy that had been called in the principal. He didn't know what to expect. He handled it well, but everyone else, did you see the smirk on, Kumbutsu and Chavani's face? Just wanted to smack her upside the head. She needed a PK. But okay, let's get away from that. That's not what the topic was. So what was the most gratifying part of producing this documentary for you? I mean, what is the fact that you've done it, or one particular aspect of it, or maybe you got to help tell Chris's story so people know the agony he's gone through? I don't know. What was the most gratifying thing for you?
Yeah, that's such a good question, because there are many moments that were very gratifying. But I think the first thing that popped into my mind was, and I don't think I'll ever forget this, was the moment that I was able. So I had been editing for days and long nights, and I could see the finish line for my editing. I was like, okay, if I just do this for like another hour or two, I'm going to be done. And I'll never forget when I finally put the final credit in, which was I'd done everything else. I'd done the scrolling credit. I'd done the credit after that, but I hadn't done the words that you see when the documentary's done. So the last words, which was "the land is still occupied and the engines are still silent," I actually broke down, because I was like, I'm done. But then I realized what I had done, and I just saw those words, and it all came back. I'd been so focused on editing this thing that the emotions really weren't there. And then finally, when I was done with it, I like, even Leanne was like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "It's finally done, and I've told this story, and I hope I've done it in a fair and impactful way." And another moment that was very gratifying was when the document was released. And I think about half an hour after it was done with the premiere, I got a message from Chris, the owner, the former owner. And he said, "Brilliant." Again, I broke down in tears, because, I mean, the whole thing is about him. And I was super nervous for him to see the finished product, because you never know how people are gonna react, and I wanted to make sure that he felt, because he was always messaging me during the editing phase saying, things like, "No, it's the city's fault, and it was this and it was that," and I was reassuring him, like, "Chris, I'm definitely going to make sure that you come out on top here in terms of, like, people are going to feel for you, people are going to want justice for you. I'm going to make sure that is what's going to happen. But I'm going to do it fairly." And so when he messaged me saying, "Joe, my friend, this is brilliant. Well done." It was a huge weight off my shoulders. And at the end of the day, it didn't really matter what anyone else said. I was just so grateful that he was very happy with the product.
That's amazing. Yeah. So, Joe, you talked about when you started this project, you didn't really know about the PI Act. What put you onto the story? I mean, what made you think about this? Because I've been to Tygerberg. I went there when the UIM launched their campaign for the 2024 election back in early 2023, and drove around the backside of Tygerberg, coming from the north side of Cape Town, and went around there. But I'd heard about the Tygerberg Raceway, and people mentioned it to me a few times, but it never really piqued my interest, that story. What did this for you and got you into it?
You mean in terms of, like, what inspired me to do this documentary?
Yeah, I mean, to tell this story. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, I mean, it's not, for those who don't know, Joe is also a comedian, and he does live performances, and it's probably not something a comedian thinks of when they're coming up with material while in Tygerberg Raceway. I mean, how did this come about? Did somebody mention it to you? Did you hear about it somewhere?
Yeah, so speaking about comedy, I've taken a bit of a hiatus from comedy because of the birth of my son. Just with two kids and how hectic life is right now with the business and YouTube, I barely have enough time to write material anymore. So I've taken a bit of a break from comedy and focused a lot on YouTube. And when I was doing a story on this guy on Twitter, LP. He had done a thread. I'm not sure if you saw it. He did a long thread and he showed different towns in Cape Town before. He basically gone to Google Earth, went back in time, took a screenshot of what it looked like, and then took a screenshot of what it looked like now, and you could just see like greenery on the before and shacks.
Right. I've seen those, like where they do Joburg.
Yeah.
The same thing with Joburg.
Yeah. So he had done this with different areas in the Western Cape. And a lot of people were like quote tweeting him, even though he had shown this image, but they were quote tweeting him and saying, yeah, look at this one. There's a meme where they showed Tygerberg Raceway 2020 and then 2021 and how it was invaded. And when I did that video, it was a very short newsflash video where I showed a lot of different towns. I didn't go through the whole feed, but I showed ones that were quite shocking, like Grabouw, Hermanus, Raceway, and there were some other areas. And yeah, I said in that video, I said, maybe I should do a bit of research as to why this is happening and why is it so easy? You know what I mean? And then people in the comment section and were saying like, oh, you gotta look into it. I got a call from a friend, Clay, who I hadn't heard from since lockdown. He's like, Joe, you gotta do it. I'll help you. And he did help. He is credited in the credits. He's actually the one that tracked down Chris for me. So kudos to you, Clay, for doing that. At first, I thought I'd do a bit of a deep dive. I didn't decide to make it into a documentary until probably after chatting with Chris. And I thought, yeah, let's make. I spoke to my wife and I said, I think I want to make this into a documentary, investigating what's happening. Because as I started to talk to Chris, I also started to talk to Mark Oppenheimer and Martin. And I said, I'm going to do a documentary on land grabs or whatever. Do you know any lawyers I can speak to about land and the laws about land in South Africa? And then that's when they were like, oh, no, you just need to look at the PI Act. And then I was like, okay, who can I talk to about the PI Act? And then Martin was like, Martin was like, he's happy to talk about the property rights constitutionally and stuff like that. But Mark is the one I should chat to about the PI Act. And that's what I did. And then, yeah, that's roundabout there was like, yeah, this is definitely going to be a documentary. So yeah, it all started from LP's thread that he made.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah. You know, I watched that Vox video a few years ago when they talked about spatial, and apartheid, and I just got so angry because I didn't have the images to show that the places they're talking about weren't townships under apartheid. This is not an apartheid outgrowth. This is an ANC outcome. And then those videos that came out recently over the past year on Joburg and the Western Cape, like you're talking about, really open your eyes up. It's like watching the things about Rhodesia, what Rhodesia looked like in 1965, what it looked like in 1985, and what it looks like in 2025. It's anyway, it's really heartbreaking because there seems to be a clear effort here to revert to the 12th century. It's really just, it's so sad. It's so sad. And, with more and more people moving in the Western Cape and occupying, wetlands and putting themselves in precarious positions, the situation doesn't seem to be improving. And it doesn't matter who's running the Western Cape government. They're on the back foot dealing with this stuff because of the laws. This PI Act is an abomination the way that courts have interpreted.
No, absolutely. And it's not just limited to the Western Cape.
It's all over. Yeah.
My case study was focused because I live in the Western Cape on the Raceway, and the Raceway is very close to where I live. But this is a national problem. That's why the DA is trying to fight it at a national level, whereas the referendum party is saying no. Let's focus first on the Western Cape and then see what we can do afterwards. But regardless, yeah, this is definitely this explains any informal settlement in South Africa. This PI Act is the reason for it, and the way that nefarious forces have manipulated it, used it to their advantage, twist the law around. And I mean, even JP was saying in the documentary, even someone who puts just a tarp over their head can be deemed as a home. I mean, come on.
It's ludicrous.
There has to be, you have to have a clear definition. And also, for someone to be able to just jump into someone's backyard, put up a tent and say, boom, this is my home, without being able to, and here's the thing, guys, we got to make this clear. The only way you can kick them off is if you immediately stop it. which is something JP also mentioned that wasn't. So JP mentions that you have to be there immediately. But one of the things he said that I didn't include, it didn't make the cut, was that how is he supposed to put a cop on every corner of the street? It's physically impossible. Just to look out for people who may put up a shack or put up a tent or what have you. Because that's the thing. The law says you have to be there immediately to stop it.
Well,
if you don't,
it makes you a prisoner in your home because you can't go on holiday.
Exactly.
You can't work abroad for a couple months because your home and your place has been stolen. We've had people in jurisdictions in America trying to pass things like this, like in New York City and other places, California, which just makes it impossible for property owners. When you undermine property rights, you revert to the dark ages. We saw that countries that have done well have respected property rights. That's why one of the key tenets of the African Growth and Opportunity Act is respect for private property, and why South Africa technically has been ineligible for access to AGOA since 2018 when they introduced expropriation on compensation because they're abrogating property rights. And I think the perfect example of this, that any of these idiots and socialists, if they don't understand the world, if they want to at least try to understand the world, all they have to do is read Hernando de Soto's book about Peru and how Peru gave land tenure to the peasants occupying land where they lived for centuries. They gave them rights. That gave them collateral. They could borrow money from a bank. They could pledge it as collateral. And Peru's economy took off just like this. It soared. And the wealth and per capita income soared along with it. And people were lifted out of poverty because they had a tangible asset instead of undermining it. And those property rights were protected. Joe, we're going to run out of time here because you've got other things to do. But before we go, I've got a breaking news story here that just came out. The Investigating Directorate Against Corruption has arrested South African Police Service Crime Intelligence boss, Major General Dumasini Kumalo, in connection with alleged unlawful senior appointments. It's the second time a senior counterintelligence or crime intelligence officers have been arrested in 2 weeks. Wow. Earlier this month, Major General Pilane Lushaba was arrested, chief financial officer. This is not good. This is not good. I mean, it's good that the criminals are being arrested if he's a criminal, but it's not good that this kind of rot is in places like the police. So that's a breaking story. That just came out as you were speaking. That's what I want to get to before we wrap up here. All right, Joe. So Tygerberg documentary, I don't mean to puff your ego up, but I mean, it deserves to be puffed up. It's a brilliant documentary. Well done. Congratulations to you and your entire team for all the work that they did on telling the story. I was really impressed, and I'm so excited. I want to do a collab with you now, like I said. But let me turn the floor over to you for final comments. Anything you'd like to let people know about, where to go? You mentioned a Back a Buddy. By the way, Back a Buddy is responsive because I've had my viewers go over and help. If I offered to help with a few of this girl who can't hear, and then someone who's trying to raise money for passports, and then one of my viewers who got robbed 3 times and had no money. So people helped out. And their server kept crashing. So I did a short video saying, is it Back a Buddy or Break a Buddy? Fix your servers. Back a Buddy wrote to me in less than 24 hours. Apparently they heard about my video.
Really?
Yes. I mean, I hear people that write to them, they
Nice.
can't get their money out of them, but Back a Buddy wrote to me. So my point here is I'm in Pennsylvania, and that had the impact of getting Back a Buddy's attention. So let's get people's attention. I assume you're raising this money for the documentary. That's what it's all about. But anything you want to say, let people know about it. The floor is yours, Joe Emilio.
Thank you. First of all, Chris, thank you for having me on your show and for your time and for helping me to promote this and talking about it and stuff. All I'm going to say is, guys, please, even if you've shared it already, share it again. Share it to people, because not everybody, what I'm finding even with my contacts is I'll ask them, have you seen the documentary? Like, oh, sorry, I got busy or whatever. The weekend's coming up. Tell them, make time, just an hour of their time, even 30 minutes, because if they watch the first 15, they'll be hooked. So just tell them, here, if you haven't watched it yet, watch it this weekend. Something for you to get your teeth in, make some popcorn, enjoy it. Because let's follow up with everybody that you shared it with. Share it again on your community groups, on your WhatsApp groups, Facebook, all that stuff. Share it one more time, guys, because we need this message to get out far and wide. That's the first thing. Second thing, if you're wondering if I'm going to do another one, I would love to do another one. I really would. And like I said, I have an idea for another one already, but I need your help. I don't like begging. I really don't. But a lot of time and effort and sacrifices that I made went into the first one. I can't do it without a bit of funding the second one, because I am going to be required to travel. There's going to be accommodation, security. It's not just about also upping the game, because I'll make investment into nice equipment, and I want to try and make it Netflix ready, if that makes sense. So if I can reach the goal of 150K, I know I've got a decent budget. And if you guys think that's a lot of money, it's really not, because most documentaries and movies take millions to make. So it's still a bit of a tight budget, but I can make it work. Like you saw what I did with no budget. Imagine what I can do with just a little bit of budget. So please go to that Back a Buddy link. I'm sure Chris has put it in the description. If he hasn't, he will. And share it with your WhatsApp people and stuff like that. Please, even if it's just 50 Rand, if everybody contributes, we have 1,000 people contributing 50 Rand, it will really help a lot. So yeah, that's it. And once again, thank you all so much for the shares, for watching, for the likes, for the comments, and all the positivity that's come my way. Thank you guys so much. Really, really does mean a lot to me. I wanted to tell Chris's story, and I feel honored to have done so. So let's make sure the whole world hears his story. Thanks again, Chris.
Well, that's brilliant, Joe. And as far as the Back a Buddy and raising money, don't fret over that. I mean, not that you are, but I don't think people realize the cost of things. The flying monkey crowd that attacked Amy, remember those idiots? One of them made a video about me on TikTok, and they seem incapable of paying attention, attacking me, saying that I'm stupid because I don't know the difference between 49 and 59. No, they're idiots because they don't know the truth. They listen to propaganda. It was actually 59 who came in the first group. But anyway, the flying monkeys running their mouth about, I have memberships on my channel and it's not free. It is free, just like your channel. People can watch the content for free. Nothing's behind a paywall. But people don't realize what this stuff costs. I mean, I've spent $40,000 to almost $50,000 out of my pocket over the past 5 years doing YouTube, and people are like, how is that possible? Well, $3,100 to fly to South Africa, that's the start of it, and that's the start of an $8,000 to $10,000 trip, one trip for 1 month. That's a lot of money, so that's coming over, and filming these things and doing this in the travel, and I haven't, well, I'm not going to disclose whether I have security or not. I'll let people guess, but but all that stuff adds up. And so, what you're doing at Back a Buddy is no different than what venture capitalists do, trying to raise money in a different fashion for people. So there's nothing wrong with that. And if people want to support it, you can help raise the money, and we'll get another quality video out of Joe. So thank you for all you did on this, Joe. I really, I was impressed. I was blown away. I think that I didn't give you an immediate response back or something like that. You got a little antsy, like, so what did you think? I'm like, dude, I'm on a can. Give me a minute.
Well, come on, can you blame me? Because you sent me a voice note saying I'm 15 minutes in and it's brilliant. And then I waited and I was like, okay, wait, he sent this about 9:45. It's 10:50. He should be done by now. And I haven't heard anything.
Now, that was 9:45 your time. So what time was that for me? It was 3:45 in the morning. Okay. Anyway, but seriously, well done, Joe. All right. Well, thanks a lot. You got to go take care of those kids, I think, and make sure that they're not tearing the place up. By the way, look, I don't want to hear any nonsense about, you don't have time to make, come up with material for comedy. I mean, you've got small kids. They create content every hour.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
or they fill up their nappies. One of the two, or both.
One of the two, yeah, definitely. It's a lot of cock jokes, trust me.
No doubt. All right, Joe Emilio, thanks a lot, brother. It's always a pleasure, and best of luck. We look forward to the stuff. And Joe's channel, he's changed the name of it now, or at least the program. What's it called now? The News something?
Newsflash with Joe Emilio.
There you go. So check that out, folks. I'll get those links in. There wasn't time for me. I've got like 5 broadcasts today. I didn't have time to put in, so we'll get it in there. I hope you like the thumbnail for this. I tried. I still.
Yeah, I really love the thumbnail. Sorry, I know I was supposed to also send you an image.
No. I found a good image that fit really well with that. I like that one there. It's kind of.
Where did you find it?
I'm not going to tell you that. It's actually.
No, you should say I have my sources.
Oh, I do have my sources. Anyway, I think John Steenhuisen sent it to me.
Oh, okay.
Anyway,
yeah, him and I are buddies.
Oh, there it is. You've just bombed it with the link. So go check it out. If you're not a subscriber, folks, go join it, and you can see that Joe's put more time into his news reporting, and the quality is there. So check it out, and get some input from a very confused Texan, Mexican, Egyptian, South African. I don't know what he is. He's one or all those things.
I keep telling you, Chris, I'm African American.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that. Elon Musk is African American. John Kerry's wife is African American. She's from Mozambique. Portuguese, but she's from Mozambique. All right, Joe. Have a good one, man. I'll let you drop off and I'll wrap up.
Cool. All right. Cheers, guys. Thank you so much. Thanks, Chris. Bye.
All right, you're welcome. Bye-bye. All right, folks, that's Joe Emilio talking about his documentary on Tygerberg Raceway, what happened there. Absolutely brilliant documentary. If you haven't seen it, look it up. Stolen Ground is the name of it, and I think you'll find it unbelievable. It's amazing. 93,000 views. I checked on a few minutes ago. By the way, more breaking news. Of course, it came up before we went live with this. That was during the press conference from the Pentagon that Andrew Whitfield, the Deputy Trade Minister, was sacked by Ramaphosa. He's reshuffling his cabinet right now. And apparently, there's an emergency press conference from the DA talking about this. Ronaldo, I actually think, has something going on there. If you want to go over to Ronaldo right now, I don't have the link. Let me see. Can one of my mods put the link in Ronaldo real quick and send people over there? Because from here, you're going to be rerouted to the interview with the Ref G. Earl Langton will be on my show at the bottom of the hour. So we have that coming up shortly. Okay? Yeah. Sennheisen's pissed off. Well, good. But they're not going to back out. They're not going to do anything. And there's the link to the. There's Joe's put the link into the documentary. You can get that. But also, folks, if you want to go over to Ronaldo and catch the press conference live, I haven't got time to set that up. I've got to get ready for Earl Langton at the bottom of the hour, and also prepare for the news at the top after that. So thanks a lot, everybody. And my thanks to Joe Emilio as always. It's a pleasure chatting with Joe. And my favorite African American. That's it, guys. We'll catch you in a few minutes with Earl Langton. The next in our refugees, the 59ers who came over. All right. Cheers. Thanks a lot, Joe. And you guys check out his documentary. I mean, look, I'm not an easy person to impress, really. It takes a lot to impress me. I've seen so much. I've been so many places, but this thing is impressive. All right. Go check it out. Cheers. Whoops. I did it again. My Zoom got moved. All right. So I got to turn the Zoom off. Now the closing credits. Sorry about that, guys.